Upon completing 500 days after the beginning of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has exposed the situation of what is happening in Ukraine in a very controversial way worldwide. The Ukrainians are running out of ammunition, and for this reason it is necessary to send them, with the approval of Europe, thousands of cluster bombs. A weapon banned in more than 100 countries and denounced by the UN, the Red Cross and humanitarian organizations for its devastating effects in the short and long term on the military, civilians and infrastructure. Stay until the end so that you know everything related to this controversy that many say is the beginning of a possible world war. A cluster bomb is a free-fall or directed bombardment weapon that can be dropped from land, sea, or air. In its composition, it has a device that releases a large number of small bombs when it opens, generally a few meters before hitting the target. These submunitions can cause different damage, such as perforating armored vehicles with their explosive charge, killing or injuring many people indiscriminately with their shrapnel fragments, or causing fires and serious damage to any structure such as buildings and facilities. Its creator was Carlos Remigio Cardo and Cornejo, a Chilean businessman born in Santa Cruz on May 1, 1942, who has developed investments in the metallurgical, chemical, agro-industrial and tourist sectors. Between 10 and 40% of cluster bombs do not explode when dropped, so much of this ammunition could be fatally activated by civilians even years after the conflict in which they were used ends. As has happened after half a century in Vietnam and Laos, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has washed his hands of the supply of this ammunition and has pointed out that each member state of the Atlantic Alliance is free to decide whether or not to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. It will be up to the governments to decide, not to NATO as an alliance, he has asserted. The Russian reaction has not been long in coming. The Russian ambassador to the US, Anatoly Antonov, considers that the decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine is a gesture of despair and impotence by Ukraine's allies in the face of the lack of success in the Kyiv counteroffensive. Antonov has warned that this new crossing of a red line in the war in Ukraine by the United States brings humanity closer to a new world war. What is now intended is to use cluster bombs on a massive scale, since, as Washington has recognized, the Ukrainian army finds itself unable to overcome the fortified front line that Russia has laid out along the almost 1,200 kilometers that separates Ukraine from the territories occupied by the Russian armed forces. The United States has not signed the International Convention for the Prohibition, Possession and Transfer of this type of ammunition as 123 countries have done, adopted in Dublin, Ireland, in May 2008 and ratified on December 3 of the same year, known as the Convention from Oslo. Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov claimed that cluster munitions will only be used in open fields where there is a concentration of Russian military. In a Twitter message, Reznikov makes it clear that the use of these indiscriminate destruction bombs is more than justified in the Ukrainian case. Our position is simple: we need to liberate our temporarily occupied territories and save the lives of our people. For this we have to inflict losses on the enemy, war criminals, rapists, and looters who are occupying our territories. With that categorization of the enemy, any means to annihilate it is justified, and any denunciation by international organizations, such as the International Committee of the Red Cross, HRW, or the UN itself, becomes a pro-Russian act. As Ukrainian presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak put it this way, human rights activists are launching an aggressive lobbying campaign not to expel Russia from the UN but to torpedo arms supplies to Ukraine. Podolyak has justified and welcomed the use of cluster bombs, because, after all, the war in Ukraine is bloody and more weapons are needed. However, HRW insists that, although the use of cluster bombs to attack enemy forces is not illegal under international law, their effects on the civilian population, either by dropping them on population centers or by their devastating actions by mining large areas of land, they could be considered war crimes. What would happen if, after these weapons were launched, there were several unexploded munitions left near civilian areas and due to their striking shapes for children and adolescents, they are mishandled or even stepped on or hit without intention, remaining buried or camouflaged in the ground?